All right, hello once again, Jeff Scott from Jeff Teaches Programming, and at long last, we are going to begin talking about how to take the payroll application that we've been working with and convert that into an EFCore application. Before I do, there's a couple things I wanted to say because it's going to lead right into it. All right, when we do this, there were two ways that I could handle this. All right, there were two ways that I could handle this. And what I mean by that is I could either have made one table and put everything in there, or made multiple tables. All right, one for each employee type. So again, we have two options. Number one is to make one database table to handle everything. Now, I don't know where I read this, but this is also known as table per hierarchy, or TPR, TPH, I should say. All right, and what that means is all classes in an inheritance hierarchy are stored in a single table. A special column also known as a discriminator is used to identify the subtype used. Now, that's probably as clear as mud, so let's talk about how we could do this. All right. So the way we do this is we would create a table, and let's just call it employee. All right, and it'll have different field names, different field types, and we'll just add some notes here so you have some kind of an idea of what I'm talking about. Okay. All right, so taking it from the top, we have an ID. It would be of type int, and it would end up being our primary key. Next, we would have an employee type. It would be a string, and it would be our discriminator. Next, we would have hours worked. It would be a decimal, and it would be just that, hours worked. And I think that we put in here must be greater than or equal to 0 and less than or equal to 84, which would be like 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. Then we had hourly rate, which would be a decimal. And again, that was greater than or equal to 0. And it was less than or equal to 99.99. These were all arbitrary values I came up with. Next, we had pieces made, which was a decimal. Oh, I'm sorry, it was an integer. You can't make part of a piece. And that was greater than or equal to 0. Whoops. Greater than or equal to 0, I think it was, and less than or equal to 100. I believe that's what it was. Then we had price per piece, which was a decimal. It was greater than 0. Can't have, we're not making anything free, so greater than 0, and less than or equal to $1. All right, because I'm a little quirky, as you know about this stuff. Let me there. And next we had commission percentage, which was a decimal. And I believe it was greater than or equal to 0, maybe not, or maybe it was just greater than 0, I don't remember. And I think it was less than or equal to 33% or 25% or 10, I don't remember what the number was. I'm going to guess 33. Then we had a sales amount, which was a decimal, and it was greater than or equal to 0, and it was less than or equal to 100,000. And again, those were just arbitrary values. Then we had a salary, which was a decimal, and it was the same as this one. So it was greater than or equal to 0 and less than or equal to 100,000. Now, why am I even showing you this? Well, I'm showing you this because this is not what I used, and I want to explain why. I'm going to end up having a lot of nulls in there. What I mean is, if the employee type was an hourly employee, these 4 fields would be filled in, and the other 5 that you see would have to be null. All right? In much the same way, if it was a piece worker employee, these 2 fields would be filled in, these 2 fields would be filled in, and the other 5 or so would be null. If it was a commission worker, these 2 fields would be filled in, these 2 fields would be filled in, and the other 5 would be null. And finally, if it was a salaried worker, these 2 fields would be filled in, this 1 field would be filled in, and the other 6 would end up being empty, null, unknown, unusable, whatever you want to call it. All right? So the advantage of doing it this way, just so you know, is you'd get very fast queries. You don't have to do any database joins because there's only 1 table. The schema is fairly simple. If you had a large data set, so a lot of employees, that would give you pretty good performance. So that's the advantage. So what's the disadvantage? Well, you'd have all these nulls that I mentioned. It would be harder to enforce things specific to that subtype, constraints, like the thing I put in notes there. And finally, the table could become almost unwieldy as far as being way too big. So how do we get around that? All right, well, I'm going to show it to you like this. Put a little delimiter here. I'll just put these there. All right, so that's the first way of doing it. Well, the other way of doing it would be to make one database table as the root table, and make one derived table for each of the employee types. All right, so that was the other one. So we called the other one, the first one was called table per hierarchy. This one is referred to as table by type. Table per type, I guess it is. Also known as TPT. And in that one, each class in the hierarchy gets its own table. The derived table, or each derived table, I should say, each derived table references a base table using a foreign key. Now that's a little hard to understand, but what I want to mention from that, because I'm going to show you the setup in a second, but we're going to put this ID into every table, and it's going to be both a primary key for that table and a foreign key to allow us, for lack of better words, to reference the other table. So I'm going to grab this because I want this in every one of these. And I'm going to come in here. Whoops. And we're going to make 4 tables. I'm not done yet, but we'll call these hourly employee, worker employee, commission employee, and salaried employee. All right. And each one of them is going to have this in there, and it will be the primary key. And it'll also be / foreign key. Okay, so bring that in. And actually, that's wrong. It'll be in these 4. It'll be the primary key and the foreign key in these tables. It'll be the primary key, just the primary key in the first one. We'll fix it in just a minute. All right, so in this first one, an employee, it'll be just the primary key. All right, we're also going to have in this table a field that we're going to call employee type. It'll be a string, and it'll hold either, or one of these, how about this, one of these. In other words, it'll hold either hourly or piece worker or commission or salaried. And that's it. That's all that's going to be in there, those 2 fields. Now this table is also known as the root table. And each one of these are known as derived tables. So this is going to be derived table number 1. Just copy all this. This will be derived table number 2. This will be derived table number 3. And this will be derived table number 4. All right, so let's talk about what's going to be in these. They're going to be short, small, sweet tables. This one will have hours worked. In fact, I think we can just copy this stuff from here. Hours worked and hourly rate. All right. This one will have pieces made and price per piece. This one will have commission percentage, and sales amount. And the last one will have salary. So these are the derived tables. Now, can I show you all of it at once? I can, but I'm going to have to make it a lot smaller here. There. So what you see now is rather than having one table with everything in it like we had here, we now have 5 tables. One root table, which contains only the ID and the employee type, which is going to hold one of those values. And then we have, other than the root table, we've got the 4 derived tables. And I guess I'm only showing 3 here. All right. And with those derived tables, the first one is the hourly employee that has the ID, the hours worked, and the hourly rate. So it only has the information about an hourly employee. The second one that only has information about a piecework or employee. Other than the ID, has the number of pieces she or he made and the price per piece. Third, we have the commission employee that has the ID and that employee's commission percentage and that employee's sales. Finally, we've got the salaried employee, which has the ID and the salary for that particular person. All right. So what did that buy us? Okay. Basically, the advantage of this is we've normalized the database. That's something I talked about a long time ago. I'm not going to get into it again. All right. But we broke it up in a way that at least seems to make sense. We don't have to worry about all those nulls that we talked about before. The integrity of our data is better because each table has only got one function rather than one table with all functions. All right, we have clearly separated this into subtypes. So what's the disadvantage? Well, if we want information, we're going to have to do joins, which means that we're going to have slower queries. And you could look at it and say that probably at least our the other thing, again, how do we want to put this? Let's see if I put it in my notes someplace. I don't know. The schema is more complex. It's the same information, but since it's broken up into multiple tables, it's more complex. So what I want to do is I'm going to want to come in and bring in. All right, I'm going to want to try to come in and bring in the last version of the GUI project that we were working on before. All right, that's the third iteration. Now there is a problem with that. All right, and I'm not sure if it's going to come over okay or not come over okay, but what I want to mention is the possible problem with that is that particular program was made, if you remember, we were using .NET Framework 4.7.2, which is an older framework. We're now using .NET 8. So I'm going to have to make some changes to my project file. When I've tried doing that in the past and mixing stuff from different frameworks, I've had problems with it. So I may end up with some problems with this. I don't know if I will or not. I guess we'll see. How's that? All right. So when I look at this, and I tried bringing it over before, I don't know if I still have it or not. No, I don't. All right. I'm going to come into here, and I'm going to find that third iteration of Pay GUI right here. Just copy it out here. Now, when you look at what's in here, I mean, what do we have? We've got all these forms. We've got our form, etc. All right. And at a minimum, what I'm going to have to do when I bring these in, if you look, they all say on here that the namespace is this. I'm going to need a new namespace because I'm going to be creating a new project. So what I'm going to try to do is bring all these things in and make some changes to them. I don't know if it'll work or not. Like I said, what I've had problems with this in the past is when I mix a lot of this stuff up, things start to go haywire. I'm not making an excuse, but I'd like to do this as soon as, in as crisp a way as possible. Why? Because what I'd like to do is I've explained to you now what I want to do, and what I would like to do next is to come in and actually create the base class for you and the derived classes for you. All right. We'll see if it works. So let's see. I will come into here, start this up, bring in my Entity Framework projects, So you can see what's in there right now. We don't need this. We've got this. We've got our BMI EFCore01, which really shouldn't have even been called EF because it was an entity framework. It was using the ActiveX data objects. We've got our BMI EFCore02, which actually was an EFCore program. We've got our original BMI library, which I used for BMI EFCore02. We've got BMI library 01, which I used for BMI EFCore01. This person app that we used just as an example program, and our validation library. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to create a new project. All right, it is going to be a Windows Forms app that we're going to call, we'll call it PayrollEFCore. I don't think we're going to make two of them, but we'll just call it 01 in there anyway. All right, next, we want it to be version 8, so we're creating that. All right, now you hopefully will remember that amongst other things, what that did was it created our form, and I don't want that form. I want to be able to bring in the other form. All right, so I'm going to remove this form right away. Well, let's see if I can remove it the other way. How's that? Let's close this. I don't want to exclude from project. I'm not sure exactly what that does. But I'm going to come over to here. In the worst case, since I'm basically working with copies here, so this was my new one I just created. We're going to get rid of everything that says form. All right, so that's deleted. All right, come back to here, and hopefully it's been deleted. It looks like it is gone. And I'm going to see if I can add my other original form. I don't need that right now. I may later. So let's go in here and let's add an existing item. And we will go back to our desktop and this PayrollEFCore01, I don't know if that's third iteration Pay GUI. It's the one that we just did, I believe. Yes. All right, I'm going to try to bring in these form files. All right, hopefully it brought those in okay without any problems. All right, now, no idea if this is going to work or not. That looks good. All right, let's just run this. I have no idea if it'll run or not. Like I said, when I've done this in the past, it's been with mixed success. Oh, I still have the other project as my default project. So set a startup project and try to run it. Like I said, I could very well get an error here. And I did. Oh, I know what the problem is. Okay, view code. That's it. We need to change the namespace to PayrollEFCore01. All right. We don't have a validation lib in here, but we do have a validation library. That's still going to give us an error. Don't worry about it, because we have to come in here and we'll have to add a project reference to validation library. Say OK. Still giving us errors there. That one's fixed now, and that's good. This initialized component, that's the problem. It does not exist in the current context. Maybe I didn't copy over all the files. I don't know. Let's take a quick look. I think I copied over 3 files. The designer, the resx. I want to be able to eventually copy in all these. All right. But like I said, that probably the problem I'm having right now with these is in here. This is my guess, at least, that if I come in here and I open up this proj file, all right, then I'm going to have to add that file, update form1.cs subtype form. Well, that's a start. All right, but I think there's still some problems in here, and I'm going to have to try to fix those. All right, I'm going to do that. Now, you're not going to watch me do that because I'm not sure exactly what I'll be doing. But you can tell what I want to do in here. It's not recognizing anything. So even though that system.windows.forms is in there, it says it does not exist. Well, if I open up here this form designer, it's all in there, but there is no correlation between the form and the CS proj file, and I'm going to have to try to fix that. Again, when I tried to run this, as you saw, I got an error. Well, in fact, let's do this. Let's see if we can rebuild the solution, if I get an error or not. Oh, there's all sorts of errors. Yeah, well, you can see all the problems I'm having, and it's all okay. Hopefully it'll be something fairly simple. All right, and I'm going to try to come up with that, and I'll be back with that in the next lecture. See you then.